The third year with Victoria. After another one of their usual nights together, he found himself replaying her casual words. What are the Rhodeses afraid of? It's not like I'm going to marry him. I don't like drama, and he's clean and does what he's told. When she stepped out of the shower, he called out to her. I'm turning 26 next month. My parents are pressuring me to come home, meet someone, and get married. I agreed. Victoria just nodded, lighting a cigarette. Good for you. When the time comes, tell me your fiancé's name. I'll vet her for you. She wrapped her arms around his waist, but her voice was cold. You were with me after all. I can't let someone walk all over you. It was already his third year with Victoria Rhodes. No one would have guessed he would be the man who lasted the longest with her. And no one would have guessed that the heir to the Rhodes Corporation, known to the world as a stern, serious, and self-disciplined woman, would be so indulgent in private. Her needs had always been significant. Even after 3 years together, he still hadn't completely gotten used to it. As if sensing his mind was wandering, Victoria dug her fingers into his waist, pulling him tighter against her. What are you thinking about? He lifted his eyes and met her bottomless, dark gaze. It's too much, he murmured. His brow furrowed as a haze of moisture clouded his eyes. Victoria seemed to let out a soft laugh. So sensitive. She tilted her head up to kiss him. He returned her kiss, then moved down to her chin and her delicate collarbone. She let out a muffled groan, her long fingers practically squeezing his waist in two. A woman in her late 20s, yet despite her demanding job, she kept her body in perfect shape. He'd enjoyed himself these past few years. It wasn't a loss. Tracing the firm lines of her narrow waist, he closed his eyes and let himself sink into the moment. An hour later, it was over, leaving them both breathless. Victoria kissed his unfocused eyes as he lay limply on the bed, then got up and went to the bathroom. The sound of running water slowly pulled his thoughts back to reality. 3 years together. It wasn't like he hadn't had his share of unrealistic dreams. But he was also keenly aware that there was no future for them. Still, hearing her confirm it was a different kind of feeling, one that was hard to put into words. She was always a woman of few words, her speech rarely carrying much emotion. Only that one night, when she was drunk, did she let a few true feelings slip out. Every word she'd said reeked of indifference. What are the Rhodeses afraid of? It's not like I'm going to marry him. But Vic, you've been together for 3 years. There has to be some kind of connection, right? I don't like drama. He's always been so well behaved and obedient. I'm a germaphobe and he's clean. That's all. The memory of it made him laugh softly. It was true. When he first got with her, he was a blank slate, knowing nothing. She had molded him, bit by bit, according to her own tastes. Now, the man Leo Vance had become, from his style of dress to his moves in bed, was exactly what she liked. But that was all. Victoria came out, her hair dry, and started to get dressed. As she was tying her scarf, he said her name. Victoria. I'm turning 26 next month. What do you want for your birthday? She leaned in to kiss him, but he turned his face away. My parents want me to go back home, meet someone, and get married. Victoria glanced at him, then let go of her scarf and nodded. She picked up a pack of cigarettes and a lighter from the table and lit one. He walked over and opened the window. Her deep voice came from behind him. Good for you. His fingers unconsciously tugged at the tassels on the curtains. He stared blankly out the window. This was the heart of New York City, where an inch of land was worth a fortune. Luxury apartments here went for tens, even hundreds of millions. If it weren't for Victoria, he wouldn't have even had the chance to set foot in a place like this. But Victoria came up from behind and wrapped her arms around him, a faint smell of tobacco enveloping him. When the time comes, tell me your fiancé's name. I'll vet her for you. Her lips brushed against his ear. Her touch was gentle, but her voice was cold. You were with me after all. Her tone was light, tinged with a rare hint of amusement. I'd hate to see someone walk all over you. He tried to force a smile, hoping it didn't look too stiff. You don't have to. The hand on his waist seemed to tighten for a moment, but then it relaxed. He took the opportunity to step out of her embrace. I'm on leave for the next 2 days. I'll pack my things and move out as soon as I can. Victoria stubbed out her cigarette and gave him an emotionless look. Suit yourself. She turned and went into the walk-in closet. A moment later, she emerged with her coat. He watched her walk toward the door, all the way to the entryway. Victoria. She stopped but didn't turn around. He stared at her back, a little dazed. He couldn't imagine that just a few minutes ago, she was kissing him, calling him Leo. A sudden sting filled his nose, and he fought back the tears that threatened to spill. Should I leave the keycard with security or whatever? I'm not living here anymore. With that, Victoria opened the door and left. The sound of the door closing was a bit too loud, like a fist slamming into his heart. After she left, the whole apartment felt instantly empty. He sank onto the sofa, drained of all energy, and sat there for a long time. Then he forced himself to start packing. Once his bags were packed, he started writing his resignation letter. He still had some work to hand over before he could officially leave. He would have to stay in NYC for a few more days. He booked a cheap hotel online and checked in. Suddenly, he had nothing but time on his hands. An old college classmate who had returned with success from abroad was organizing a reunion. The hotel he booked was incredibly high-end. Since he was in the city, it would look bad if he didn't go. He just didn't expect Tina Lynn, the queen of campus from his college days, to be there. The moment she pushed open the door to the private room, a stir went through all the guys. Tina, you're back in the country. Wow, you're even more beautiful than you were in college. Tina, you know I had a crush on you for 2 years back in the day. Who didn't have a crush on Tina? Right, Leo? The guy next to him grabbed his arm, shaking it excitedly. He instinctively looked toward Tina. She stood there, an elegant trench coat draped over her arm. Her figure was as slender and graceful as he remembered. Her gaze passed over the crowd and landed on him. Leo, long time no see. Tina, long time no see. A gentle smile slowly bloomed in Tina's eyes. You've matured a lot. You're even more handsome. After the party, everyone tactfully arranged for Tina to give him a ride home. He'd had a little to drink. His face was flushed, and his steps were unsteady. As they got out of the elevator, Tina thoughtfully supported him. He quickly thanked her, but before he could pull his arm away, he felt a sharp gaze from a distance. He looked over instinctively and met Victoria's cold stare. She was surrounded by a group of people, standing under the magnificent lights of the lobby. Her beautiful, chilly face was as expressionless as ever, but you could clearly sense her displeasure. He was only stunned for a couple of seconds before he looked away and continued walking. But Tina called out to him, "Leo, wait for me a second. I'm just going to say hi to a friend." He stood there and watched as Tina walked smilingly toward Victoria. Victoria, long time no see. It really is a small world. They chatted and laughed like old friends. He decided to walk a little farther away to avoid them, but he couldn't help but overhear Victoria's unhurried voice. Your boyfriend? Tina laughed. He's just a friend from college, a few years younger than me. After a pause, she added meaningfully, as for a boyfriend, I'm still working on it. Victoria gave a slight nod. He's handsome. Good luck with that. Tina was clearly surprised but also delighted. You think Leo's handsome too, don't you? Back in college, he was just this sweet, innocent, naive kid. I almost didn't recognize him after all these years. Victoria's gaze fell once more on his straight back. He was dressed impeccably today. A fitted shirt outlined his broad shoulders and narrow waist. He really did look different. She said coolly, I have something tonight. We'll catch up properly another time. Okay, you go on. I'll take Leo home first. Tina watched Victoria get into the elevator before turning back to him. Sorry to keep you waiting. Let's get you home. He shook his head, followed her out, and got into her car. That woman earlier, the heir to the Rhodes Corporation, is really something else. Is that so? I don't really know her. We were high school classmates for 2 years. Then she went abroad. Tina glanced at him, but she seemed so cold and hard to get to know. You wouldn't guess it, but she was a total hopeless romantic when she was younger. His fingers unconsciously tightened on the seam of his pants. For a second, he felt his heart skip a beat. It was a guy she was dating when she was studying abroad. From Hong Kong. His family was crazy rich. They were the golden couple of the international student scene back then. As she said this, Tina glanced at him again. At first glance, you kind of look like him. His chest suddenly constricted. A dense, aching sourness filled him completely. After a while, he finally found his voice. What happened then? Later, I think the guy didn't want to move to New York to build his career. He wanted her to go to Hong Kong. Tina shook her head with a smile. She's the only daughter of the Rhodes family. How could she possibly leave behind such a huge family enterprise to follow a man to Hong Kong? So they fought over it. They were both young and proud. Neither would back down, and they broke up for good. That's a shame. It is. They said she almost died for that guy back then. He slowly lowered his eyes, secretly unclenching his fist. His palm was slick with sweat. The reason the powerful can navigate love and relationships with such ease is because they've seen it all. They've had people go through fire and water for them. They've also been crazy for someone else before. So for those who come later, no matter how passionate their love, in their eyes, it's nothing special. Suit yourself, a good for you. In their hearts, you won't stir even the slightest ripple. Leo, when you get back, remember to accept my friend request on WhatsApp. Tina helped him open the car door. He thanked her and got out. She glanced at the hotel and frowned. Do you want to switch hotels? It's a bit sketchy and not very safe for you to be staying here alone. It's fine. I'm only here for a couple of days. Well, call me anytime if you need anything. As she spoke, Tina reached out and ruffled his hair, just like she used to in college. Don't be a stranger, you hear? He instinctively took a step back, avoiding her touch. A flicker of disappointment crossed Tina's eyes, but she quickly recovered. It's late. You should go inside. He waved at her and walked into the hotel. In the dim elevator, he leaned against the wall, feeling dizzy and weak in the knees. He wasn't really that drunk. It was just the heavy weight in his heart, like a stone. The feeling was driving him crazy. When he got off the elevator, he took out his key card and swiped it. The moment he pushed the door open, a warm, large hand gripped his wrist tightly. He was pulled into a soft, fragrant embrace. His instincts kicked in, and he struggled frantically, letting out a low shout. Leo, it's me. The familiar voice made him snap his eyes open. Only then did he see the woman in front of him. It was Victoria. What? How are you in my room? Victoria pinned him against the door, looking up at him with a condescending, scrutinizing gaze. She let go of his wrist only to grab his chin. Moving on seamlessly, are we, Leo?
I'm impressed.
We already broke up. A sudden flash of anger crossed Victoria's face. She gripped his chin and slammed him against the back of the door. Her kiss was frenzied, and her deep eyes were filled with rage. Fear surged through him. He pushed desperately, but he couldn't move her. But Victoria knew his body like the back of her hand. She easily aroused him until he was weak all over. A wave of heat washed over him, like molten lava. Angry and humiliated, he kicked out at her. But she caught his calf with her warm, strong hand. Her long fingers slipped under the hem of his shirt, roaming over his firm stomach. Finally, she bit down on his shoulder through the thin fabric of his shirt. He let out a muffled grunt of pain, his eyes instantly turning red. Only then did Victoria mercifully let him go. Leo, go tell Tina. Tell her what? He glared at her, his eyes red. Victoria's lips curled into a smirk. Tell her that her sweet, innocent college friend fell apart after I just kissed him a little. Leo, do you think a woman as proud as her would still chase after you? He didn't panic. He didn't lose his composure. Once his emotions settled, he looked at Victoria. Ms. Rhodes, are you going to leave now? Or should I wait for the police to escort you out? The color in Victoria's eyes slowly darkened. Leo, you know my temper. Of course, he knew, which was why every decision he made wasn't out of spite, nor was it a tactical retreat. He had truly thought it through. He wanted to make a clean break with her. 3 years together had almost completely devoured his sanity. He didn't dare to imagine what it would be like after 4, 5, or 7 years. How excruciatingly painful, how impossible it would be to pull himself away. Better to rip the Band-Aid off now. Ms. Rhodes, we got along well these past 3 years. You were very good to me. Being with you, I learned a lot. You saved me a lot of trouble. I never had to struggle or feel slighted. I'm grateful for that. So now that we're separating, I don't want to make things ugly. If you leave now, I'll pretend this never happened. Move. Victoria suddenly cut him off. Her voice was detached, but the pitch was slightly higher than her usual tone. He took a deep breath and stepped aside. Victoria didn't look at him again, nor did she say another word. She pulled open the door and walked out. Tonight's incident was already the limit of what she would do. She was a cold-hearted person, and she never liked to force anyone. A privileged upbringing and exceptional abilities were enough to support a lifetime of pride and self-confidence. She would never bow her head. Not even that rich kid from Hong Kong could make her back down, let alone him. He looked at the closed door and laughed mockingly at himself. His chest still ached dully. Thinking about the way she had kissed him just now, he still couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness. Maybe she did have a tiny bit of affection for him. Maybe she really was a little reluctant to let him go. But he couldn't give himself a way out. The day he finished his work handover and officially resigned, he actually saw Victoria from a distance at the office. But she didn't see him. He stood there, holding a cardboard box, and waited for her to step into her private elevator. "Leo, will you come back?" A colleague he was close with asked him, reluctant to see him go. "Of course. I'll come back to visit you guys when I have the chance. Everything was going so well. Why did you suddenly decide to resign and go back home to get married? We were the best work buddies. Without you, work is going to be so boring. When you get married, you have to send me an invitation. I won't forget. Well, I'm off." He had worked here for 3 years. The work environment was great, and he got along well with his colleagues. Now that it was time to leave, he really was a little reluctant. He took one last look at his desk. He walked into the elevator holding the box. Downstairs, he walked to the curb to wait for his Uber. He didn't know that on the 36th floor, Victoria was standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling window that took up an entire wall. The cigarette between her fingers had a long ash that she hadn't flicked off. Ava was sitting on the sofa, watching her friend's back with great interest. "Why do you look like you just got dumped? You can't let him go, can you?" Ava found this quite amusing. He had seen Victoria's little boyfriend many times, a particularly obedient and well-behaved kid. He had a soft personality, too. He really didn't expect him to be so resolute all of a sudden. It was a clean break, not a trace of hesitation. Victoria slowly pulled her gaze back and flicked the ash from her cigarette. Then she gave Ava a cold look. "You have nothing better to do?" Ava stood up, grabbed her blazer and raised an eyebrow. "Want me to grab a drink with you, girl?" Victoria didn't answer, but she stubbed out her cigarette, grabbed her coat, and followed her friend out of the office. She was a workaholic. 99% of her energy was devoted to work. So, she really couldn't figure it out. Where did things go wrong with Leo? They spent almost every night together. She had brought him back a lot of gifts from her last business trip. The last holiday, they spent it together. She gave him flowers and a designer watch. She had spent the day thinking back on the details of their recent interactions. She couldn't find any oversights, nor could she recall him ever being unhappy. For 3 years, he had been so easy to handle, and she had long since gotten used to having him by her side. When he first came to the company as an intern, she was the one who had spotted him and kept him in the secretarial office. It turned out her judgment was correct. Leo was like a gentle, well-behaved little animal. He was handsome with a soft personality. Being with him was relaxing, comfortable. Women have always been generous with the men they like. The apartment they lived in together was already in his name. She had originally planned to give him the deed and the keys to a new car on their 3rd anniversary. He had just gotten his license and was still a nervous driver. But now, he suddenly said he was going home to meet someone and get married. Then he submitted his resignation. At first, she just thought he was throwing a tantrum for some reason. She had even teased him about it. But then, in a blink of an eye, she saw him on a date with Tina Lynn. Sitting in the car, Victoria sent a text to her trusted assistant. Look into Leo Vance's college days. A campus queen and a handsome, obedient younger student. So, it was perfectly reasonable to assume something had happened between them. Victoria couldn't help but frown. If Leo had been in love with Tina, then what did it mean that he had accepted her pursuit? Victoria felt an inexplicable fire burning inside her. But she couldn't pinpoint the source. That night, she had a few too many drinks. At 1 a.m., her driver took her home. Victoria leaned back in the spacious rear seat, closing her eyes tiredly. Her phone suddenly vibrated a few times. Victoria picked it up and opened it. It was a text from an unknown number. Victoria, I'm in NYC. Come pick me up. Not long after he returned to his hometown, a former colleague sent him a piece of gossip. Leo, our cold and distant CEO, Ms. Rhodes, is in the news. Looks like it's her first love, a real getting back together story. He was lost in a daze for a moment, but then he masochistically clicked on the video. It was a series of blurry photos taken by paparazzi. A late-night airport pickup. A photo of a young man getting into a car. It wasn't clear, but you could still imagine how handsome the male lead must be. The last was a photo of the two of them sitting across from each other at a restaurant. Victoria used to take him to that restaurant often. The media used over-the-top language. The epic love story of a Hong Kong tycoon and a New York heiress, spanning 7 years. It sounded incredibly touching. No wonder there's never been anyone by Ms. Rhodes's side. Turns out her heart was already taken. He replied with a few words and then closed the messaging app. That day, Tina had casually mentioned that he looked a bit like that guy. Perhaps that was the reason Victoria had noticed him when he first joined the company. Timid and a little unpolished. There was no such thing as love at first sight. It's just that people tend to fall in love with the same person over and over again. After 3 failed attempts at arranged dates, Tina sent him a text. Leo, why can't you consider me? Back in college, like all the other guys on campus, he had also been attracted to the beautiful and talented Tina Lynn. Later, they got to know each other in a club, and she was very kind and took good care of him. He was young then and had secretly thought that she treated him differently from the other guys. That maybe she liked him a little, too. Later, he accidentally saw her hugging and kissing the famous heartthrob from the athletics department. Only then did he realize that in Tina's eyes, he was just a cute underclassman. His youthful dreams were shattered, but he didn't stay sad for long. After that, he slowly distanced himself from her. When Tina graduated and went abroad, she told him to keep in touch. He smiled and agreed, but in the following years, he never once reached out. Until now, when they met again, all he felt was the ordinary affection of a former classmate. Leo, why aren't you replying? Tina, I'm almost 26. I'm not interested in a relationship that goes on for years with no end in sight. Tina called him. Leo, you're almost 26, but I'm already 28. I want a family even more than you do. So, do you understand what I mean? Can you let me think about it? Of course. In the 2nd month after returning home, his father's old illness relapsed. He had cancer 10 years ago, and the surgery was successful. But 10 years later, it suddenly relapsed without warning, and this time, there was no hope. The doctor said he had 3 months at most. When the test results came back, his mother broke down, sobbing. It's all because of that shameful business of yours in New York. Last year, that woman drove you back. You could tell her car wasn't cheap. Later, your cousin said it was a Bentley worth at least a few million. All our relatives and friends were gossiping, saying you were being kept by some rich woman in New York. Ever since then, your father has been holding in his anger. Every time your marriage came up, he'd just drink and get upset. That's why it came back. His mother started crying again. Leo, she's way out of our league. We're not the same kind of people as a woman like that. When you suddenly quit your job and came home, I knew. She was done playing with you, and she threw you away. Your dad felt bad for you but didn't dare to ask. He could only drink by himself. Let's just find a normal girl to marry, so your dad can go in peace. Can you do that? He stood for a long time before finally nodding. Okay, I'll listen to you. When Tina found out about his father, she came to his hometown overnight. She helped contact hospitals and specialists. She ran around, putting in a lot of effort. With her looks and personality, she was already very likable. She easily won over his parents' hearts. When they found out they were college alumni and that Tina came from a good family, they were even more delighted. Hearing that he still hadn't accepted Tina's advances, his parents started to blame him. It was Tina who defended him, speaking up for him. It's also because I haven't been back in the country for years. Leo and I grew apart. We just need to give him some time to get used to the idea. Uncle, Auntie, please don't blame him. It's my fault for not doing enough. That day, as he was seeing her off, Tina stopped him. Leo, I have my own selfish reasons for this too. My family is pressuring me to get married. They're pushing me to go on dates and I don't want to. So I told them I already have a boyfriend and we're planning to get our marriage license. Your uncle's health isn't good, and your marriage is also a weight on his mind. Leo, if you think I'm a decent person, why don't we give it a try? Feelings can be developed over time. Leo, I'm not pressuring you. Can I give you an answer tomorrow? Tina ruffled his hair, her smile gentle. Okay, but I'm afraid I won't be able to sleep tonight. After breaking up with Victoria, he never actively sought out any news about her. But that night, he searched for all the recent news related to her. She hadn't denied the rumors of getting back together with the Hong Kong tycoon. But all related photos and videos had been scrubbed from the internet. Victoria's most recent public appearance was at a banquet hosted by a major figure in NYC. A reporter tried to ask her about her personal life. Her expression was cold, and she didn't say a word. Her bodyguards immediately blocked the reporter. That was the first time in months he had seen her up close. Even though it was through a screen, he felt like she was a complete stranger, as if the 3 years they had shared a bed were just a dream he had imagined. As he was closing the webpage, he happened to see a post on social media. The post was tagged with Victoria's name and had just been posted to her fan page. Girls, I think I just ran into Ms. Rhodes and her first love, the one that got away. The accompanying photo was blurry, but he recognized Victoria's back immediately. She was walking side by side with a tall young man on a deserted street late at night. The young man was turned toward her, saying something, his smile radiant. The post quickly garnered over 1,000 comments. They look so good together. My sister was in their circle when she studied abroad. She said Ms. Rhodes and Mr. Ito were super sweet back then. Tell us more. My sister said it was like watching a romance drama every day. I mean, a handsome guy and a beautiful girl like that. It's a once-in-a-lifetime sight. After they broke up, Mr. Ito tried to kill himself. He almost died. He stared at this comment, stunned. Tina had told him a little about Victoria's past. But at the time, she said it was Victoria who almost died after the breakup. But the comments said it was this Mr. Ito. In truth, these old stories had nothing to do with him. He just couldn't imagine what Victoria's romance drama love life would have been like. In any case, it couldn't have been as ordinary as their 3 years together. The day he and Tina got their marriage license, she asked if she could post about it on her social feed. He agreed without a second thought. Tina was in high spirits. She pulled him in for several photos and tagged a bunch of friends. He also picked 2 photos and posted them. Just 3 simple words. I got married. A moment later, Tina's phone started ringing. But she didn't answer, just kept hanging up, tirelessly. Should you get that? He pointed to her phone. He had a feeling her mood was a little off. Wait for me in the car for a bit. Tina saw him to the car, then walked away, clutching her still ringing phone. Her back was to him, so he couldn't see her expression. The car door was closed, so he couldn't hear what she was saying. But somehow, he didn't really care. His parents were overjoyed. They posted their marriage certificate and a photo in the family group chat. Then they sent out several large red envelopes of money. He smiled, sent money of his own, and exited the chat. Just then, a call came in. When Victoria's name flashed on the screen, he felt dizzy for a moment. But he quickly composed himself. The phone rang until it stopped. He didn't answer. Victoria was acting strangely. A few seconds later, she called a second time. This time, he declined the call. And she didn't call again. Tina finished her call, but she looked upset. She rushed to the car. Leo, I'll take you to the hospital to see your dad first. I have something urgent to take care of. Okay. At the hospital, he had just gotten out of the car when it sped away. He stood there for a moment, then gave a small laugh. They were all adults. They all knew the score. Who doesn't have a past? Who doesn't have secrets? That evening, Tina called to say she had urgent business and had to return to NYC overnight. He didn't ask much, just told her to be careful on the road. After hanging up, he stood at gate of the hospital, waiting for an Uber. A third-tier city can't compare to the bustle of places like New York. It was just past 10, and the streets were already thinning out. He idly kicked at leaves on the ground. He didn't even notice Victoria's Bentley pull up in front of him. Not until a car behind him honked. He snapped his head up and saw the familiar car. He felt like he was frozen in place, unable to move. The rear window rolled down, and Victoria's voice was as calm as ever. Leo, get in. He slowly came to his senses, but he took 2 slow steps back. In the distance, the Uber he'd called had arrived. It was pulling over to the side of the road, its hazard lights flashing. He didn't look at Victoria anymore. He strode toward the car. Leo! Victoria's voice suddenly rose. His steps faltered, but he didn't turn to look at her. He was afraid he would break down, that he would give in. In front of the person you love, you're always a little more vulnerable. He didn't want to fall deeper into the trap. He didn't want his father to leave with regrets. He didn't want to become a joke to others, the guy who was played with for a few years and then tossed aside. He didn't want to be the only one left scarred in the end. He walked quickly to the Uber, pulled open the door, got in, and told the driver to go. He just didn't expect Victoria's car to follow them. Hey kid, is that car following us? The driver asked quietly, looking in the rearview mirror. Don't worry about it. Just drive. He leaned back in his seat, watching Victoria's car tailing them in the mirror. He knew he was weak. Several times he almost told the driver to stop. But in the end, he forced the words back down. Stop for what? To go back to her side. To continue this ambiguous relationship. To waste his entire youth. Sure, he could get a lot of money, a lifetime of financial security. But maybe he would have to live in the shadows forever. Just like how he worked by her side every day and slept by her side every night. But no one at the company knew he was her boyfriend. After paying, the taxi driver told him to get home safe. He thanked him and, without a single glance back at Victoria's car, hurried toward the gate of his apartment complex. But Victoria grabbed his wrist. Leo, we need to talk. I don't want to talk to you. We have nothing to talk about. He tried to shake her hand off, but she held on tighter. Fine. Then I want to talk to you. Whatever it is, we can talk tomorrow. It's late. Leo, is it because of Tina that you broke up with me? No. You had a crush on her in college. Now your dream has come true, right? No. He couldn't take it anymore. He looked up at the woman in front of him. He didn't know where her anger was coming from. He didn't know why she was angry. Maybe it was because someone she thought she had complete control over had suddenly broken free, and she couldn't adjust. Maybe it was because he and Tina got their license so quickly. It was a blow to her pride. Other than that, he couldn't explain her reaction. No? Victoria seemed to laugh at herself. Leo, don't lie to me. Whether I'm lying or not, does it have anything to do with you? Of course it does. Leo, you know I hate it when people lie to me or use me. Victoria was always emotionally stable. In the 3 years they were together, he had never seen her lose her composure for a second. But right now, her emotions were clearly volatile. I didn't lie to you and I didn't use you. If you don't believe me, go ahead and investigate. I had no contact with Tina for all those years. The first time I saw her again was at the class reunion, a few days after we broke up. The same night I ran into you. Ms. Rhodes, it's not illegal for me to date or get married after a breakup. Is it? Victoria looked at the man in front of her. A few months apart and he had lost weight. He looked a bit worn out. He used to always have a gentle smile, one that could melt anything. that made people like him. Now he just seemed listless. He was right. He and Tina had indeed only met for the first time after he broke up with her. And it wasn't illegal to date or get married after a breakup. But a fire was smoldering inside her, and the pent-up emotions were swelling in her chest. Kept her up at night. Ava had once told her, "You're just used to having Leo around all these years. Usually, it only takes 21 days to adapt, forget, and start over." First, she thought so too. Since Leo liked Tina, and they were getting back together, then she could wish them well. But from the day they broke up until today, 3 sets of 21 days had passed. She couldn't forget him. It was like an addiction she couldn't break. In fact, she had later asked Ava, "You and Julia have been apart for 3 years. Have you adapted, forgotten, and started over?" The only answer she got was a long, long silence. In that moment, on her friend's face, she saw her own reflection, the same sense of loss. "Ms. Rhodes, do you remember when you drove me back to my hometown last year?" He smoothed his hair, looking calmly at the woman before him. Actually, what his relatives said wasn't wrong. In his eyes, it was a 3-year relationship. In Victoria's eyes, it was more like a 3-year arrangement. Of course. He lowered his eyes and smiled. "My relatives saw your car back then. After that, rumors started spreading in my hometown, saying I was being kept by a rich woman in New York. My dad got so angry he argued with them, almost got into a fight. And that's when he started drinking again because he was in a bad mood. This year, his cancer relapsed. Leo, why didn't you tell me any of this? If I told you, would you have married me?" He looked up, a slight smile on his face. "My family and I, we're all just ordinary people. My parents, they don't expect me to marry into wealth or climb the social ladder. They just want to live honestly, and for their son to have a simple, smooth life. But you wouldn't have married me." If he hadn't overheard what she said that day, maybe he wouldn't have woken up and gotten out so quickly. "So because Tina was willing to marry you, you married her?" Victoria's eyes were faintly red. "Leo, marriage isn't a game. But that's how the world works. A relationship without marriage is just a castle in the air." He couldn't help but laugh at himself. "Besides, you don't have that many feelings for me anyway. Leo, you are not me. But I can feel it. Victoria, you've been in love before, so you should know what it's like to truly love someone." She didn't answer, just frowned and fell silent. "All right, we've said everything that needs to be said. I can swear, when I was with you, my heart was always with you. Victoria, for those 3 years I really did love you. But that's it. That's all it was. Let's part on good terms and not bother each other anymore. Okay?" He gave her one last look, fighting back the tears that threatened to fall. This was always his nature, but Victoria had never bothered to understand him. In a relationship, he would give his all, never letting his mind wander. But when it was over, it was truly over. No dragging things out, no lingering attachments. Even if it was painful, he would just grit his teeth and endure it. "Leo!" Victoria called out to him again. "I was going to give this to you on our 3rd anniversary. Now, consider it a wedding gift." She handed him a manila envelope. "You know my personality. I don't take back things I've given away. If you don't want it, or if you think it will cause you trouble, you can throw it away." After she finished speaking, she stuffed the envelope into his hands and turned to leave. What Victoria gave him was the deed to the 3,000 square foot apartment in New York, and the keys to a top-of-the-line Volvo. He had just gotten his license and was still a nervous driver. It was Victoria who had taken the time to drive with him for 2 days. Perhaps she knew he was a cautious driver, which was why she didn't choose some flashy sports car. She said it was a 3rd anniversary gift. Now it was his wedding gift. The emotions that had been building up all night finally broke. His eyes stung and his vision blurred. He sat alone for a long time, unable to describe his feelings. He didn't regret the past 3 years. For those 3 years, maybe she did have some real feelings for him. There's a common saying, where the money is, the love is. Although these things were nothing to her, at least they made him feel that the past 3 years hadn't been just his own personal chaos. That was enough. Tina had been back in NYC for 5 days and hadn't contacted him. At the hospital, his mother was a little worried. Did something happen with Tina? Why haven't we heard from her? And Leo, did she say when she's going to take you to meet her parents? Mom, she already said she'll bring her parents to visit us. You just focus on taking care of Dad. Don't worry about anything else. I just have this uneasy feeling. I mean, with Tina's credentials, his mother didn't finish, but he knew what she meant. Your son's not so bad either, he said, trying to comfort her with a smile. I'm just afraid because of your last relationship. It's not shameful to break up after a normal relationship. I just hope she doesn't get the wrong idea. He didn't say anything. It was normal for people to think that way. The difference between them was just too vast. Tina's call came. Leo. Her voice sounded tired over the phone. I'm so sorry, but my parents' visit to your family might have to be postponed for a few days. My mom isn't feeling well. She's in the hospital. It's okay, Tina. You take care of your auntie first. There's no rush. Leo. Tina seemed to hesitate. Tina, I understand. If we have to separate in the future, can we wait until my dad? Leo, don't say that. Marriage isn't a game. They both said the same thing, but their actions were worlds apart. You should get back to it, Tina. He hung up. In the hospital room, his parents were talking about something. It was a peaceful, serene atmosphere. He didn't want to go in and break the calm, but somehow he felt that the peaceful days wouldn't last much longer. Tina hadn't returned, but there was new news from the hospital. A specialist returning from abroad happened to be consulting at the hospital, reviewed his father's case, and proposed a new treatment plan. At worst, it could extend his life by 6 months. He and his mother agreed without hesitation. The treatment costs naturally multiplied, but luckily, he could still afford it. He just never expected that when he went to pay the bill, the nurse told him someone had already deposited $1 million into his father's account. He instinctively thought of Tina. He called her, but she was surprised. Leo, before I left for New York, I prepaid some of the treatment fees, but I only put in $100,000. Maybe the hospital made a mistake. After the call, he went back and asked the nurse. She said there was no mistake. The person had confirmed the payment was for his father. He couldn't help but think of Victoria. The sudden appearance of a foreign expert was probably not just luck. It was Victoria who had arranged it. He thought for a long time, then returned the $1 million to her. Ms. Rhodes, the money you gave me before, plus my own savings, is enough to cover the medical bills. But thank you anyway. Victoria received Leo's message while at a rather dull party. Tina was there too. The two, who used to be on good terms, were now like strangers. Those in the know naturally wouldn't stir up trouble, especially since Victoria had been looking grim all night. But Tina suddenly approached her. Victoria, you're the one who helped pay for Leo's father's medical bills, right? Victoria, who had just received the money transfer notification, was already in a foul mood. Tina's question made her uncharacteristically sarcastic. I am, as Leo's former boss, am I not allowed to show a little charity? Of course you can. Tina's tone was as gentle as ever. It's just that Leo is my husband now. These are things I should be doing as his wife. Victoria, I'll return the money to you. I appreciate the thought, but no need. Victoria suddenly stood up, her voice cold. It's just $1 million. I'll consider it a charitable donation, but I do mind. Tina smiled. Victoria, no woman wouldn't mind this kind of thing, right? Then you can go on minding it. Victoria's gaze fell coolly on Tina's face. Leo and I were together for 3 years. You should know that by now. A dead silence fell over the room. Everyone knew Victoria never discussed her private life. For years, the outside world had assumed she was single. But now, she was openly saying she had been with a man for 3 years. And that man was now married to her former classmate. He was single, I was single. Dating is normal. I've had boyfriends before, too. Tina's smile deepened. But Leo and I are husband and wife now. The emotions in Victoria's eyes were dark and unreadable. Only in the legal sense. The implication was clear. In practice, they had no marital relationship. It's just a matter of time. Something urgent came up in New York that delayed things. You know how Leo is. He's very sweet and shy. Of course, she knew. The first time they had sex, Leo was so nervous his body was stiff as a board. She had to coax him for almost the entire night before he relaxed. At the time, she had even considered giving up, thinking men were such a hassle. But she couldn't bring herself to do it. Leo was the man she had chosen herself. Naturally, every part of him suited her taste. But now Leo was Tina's husband. It was perfectly normal for them to sleep in the same bed and do what married couples do. Yet Victoria felt a thorn prick her heart. That thorn made her restless. She couldn't even bear the thought of it. She had also never hated someone so much. She couldn't stand to look at Tina's gentle, beautiful face for another second. I'm not in a hurry. After all, we have a lifetime. That last sentence from Tina seemed to instantly push all of Victoria's buttons. She was never one to air people's dirty laundry in public. She always kept her distance from gossip and drama. But at this moment, she found herself absurdly fighting with another woman in public. Ms. Lin, should I remind you of something? Why did your mother suddenly fall ill and get hospitalized? Could it have something to do with your half-brother? The color drained from Tina's face instantly. If you have any conscience left, Tina, you should go and confess to Leo as soon as possible. With that, Victoria didn't linger and left the hall. Victoria didn't transfer the $1 million back to him. She didn't reply to his messages either. A person as proud as her, who had had a smooth life from birth until now, was probably just annoyed by this one ungrateful person. At 3 a.m., while he was fast asleep, there was a knock on his door. He groggily got up and looked through the peephole, surprised to see Tina. In the dimly lit living room, half awake, he listened to her love story. Leo, so that's basically it. I was in a rush to get our license for my own selfish reasons. I was desperate. Mark had disappeared without a trace. He told me he would never come back unless I got married. We were on and off for years, but my mom would never accept him. I know his mom ruined my parents' marriage. Tina gave a bitter smile. But Leo, feelings are a mysterious thing. No one can control them. When I married you, my mom was actually quite happy. She wanted to come visit your family right away. But then Mark came back to find me. When my mom found out, she got so angry she ended up in the hospital. Tina covered her face in agony. Honestly, Leo, I'm so tired after all these years. At first, I just wanted to use our marriage to force him to come back and see me. But when he really did come back, I wasn't as happy as I thought I'd be. Leo, all these years, do you think I was wrong? I hurt my own mother, I hurt Mark, and I hurt you, an innocent bystander. As she spoke, she suddenly lost control and hugged him. But Leo, I think I'm really falling in love with you. When Victoria transferred you the money, I was so jealous, and knowing you were together for 3 years, I felt even worse. Leo, can you give me some time? I want to build a real life with you, Leo. But he gently pushed Tina away. We were just using each other. Actually, I should thank you. You put my dad's mind at ease. He's been doing much better lately. When my dad, he paused, then continued, we'll go get the divorce papers. Leo, you should go back. Just come to the hospital to see my dad when you have time. Tina stood up shakily. Her eyes were red, her expression a mix of pain and conflict. But in the end, she said nothing more and turned to leave. His father didn't make it to 6 months. On his deathbed, he held his hand, but his gaze shifted to Tina. He couldn't speak anymore, but he could guess what he wanted to say. Parents love their children. How could they not see what was going on? He was worried about his future marital happiness. Fighting back tears, he gently took Tina's hand. Dad, don't worry about me. Tina and I will have a very, very good life. Dad, don't worry. I will definitely be good to Leo. He finally closed his eyes. But he knew his father still carried worries for him. After the funeral, he and Tina peacefully separated. Coming out of the city hall, her mood was very low. Leo, Mark and I are completely over. If there's a chance, can I pursue you again? He shook his head. Like you said, feelings are a mysterious thing. You can't force them. Don't say any more. Let's just end it here. He smiled at her. My ride is almost here. Goodbye, Tina. Leo. Tina suddenly stepped forward and hugged him tightly. She only hugged him for a moment, but it was very tight. When they separated, She gently placed a kiss on his forehead. Before he could react, a harsh horn blared. He instinctively turned around and saw the familiar silver-gray Bentley. Victoria sat in the back, her face grim, her lips pressed into a tight line. For some reason, the gloom that had been hanging over him for so long suddenly felt like a cloud had been lifted. He couldn't help but smile. After splitting with Tina, he didn't get back together with Victoria. He just went on with his work and life as usual. He even went on one arranged date. When Victoria heard about it, she called him. "Next time, before you go on a date, let me vet them for you first. Haven't you learned your lesson?" Or, "Leo, do you want to give it another try with me?" He thought about the bizarre woman he'd met on his last date and suddenly felt that Victoria's proposal wasn't so bad. Later, he himself couldn't quite say if he and Victoria were back together or not. But after being single for so long, and with her having spoiled his tastes, he did miss it. So when she made a move, he went along with it. But before they went all the way, he asked her a few questions. About the things she said when she was drunk that day. About the one that got away from Hong Kong. Victoria was surprisingly honest. "I really didn't want to get married back then. You know, my family situation is complicated. My mom was miserable her whole life, trapped in a marriage she couldn't escape. I was originally against marriage. As for saying you were obedient and clean," Victoria stroked his face and sighed softly. "If we're going to talk about this, can you get off of me first? In this position, I can't have a calm conversation with you." He could clearly feel the changes in his own body. If this continued, he might lose control at any moment. He got off her, but one of his legs was still pressed against hers. His hand didn't move from her waist. It had been almost a year. He really missed it. He'd just chalk it up to satisfying a physical need, regulating his hormones. After all, even if he started dating again, he wouldn't find someone as beautiful and with as good a body as Victoria. "Leo, when you came to the company as an intern, I personally chose you. You were the one I picked out at first sight. Everything about you I naturally liked. So all of that was true. Then what about Mr. Ito?" He caressed the lines of her muscles, unable to resist, and tried to move his hand lower. But Victoria caught his wandering hand. "When I was studying abroad, I did date him. It was adolescence, everyone has crushes. But after 2 weeks, I found out he was too wild. Drugs, messy friends, so I broke it off. The breakup was ugly. He tried to kill himself twice, and the second time he almost died. I did feel a little guilty. Last year he came to New York, hoping to set up a partnership between his wife's company and mine. So we met a few times and we only talked about business. Any other questions? So that's how it was. A romance that looked like a movie to outsiders. The truth was rather ridiculous." He shook his head. It seemed he had no more questions. "Then let me ask you." Victoria suddenly turned on her side, looking down at him. "You and Tina, nothing happened. Just that one kiss on the forehead you saw. I'll believe you for now. Such a prude." "I'm a prude?" Victoria seemed to let out a soft laugh. "Leo, you seem to have forgotten how I used to handle you. I'm really starting to forget. Besides, it's been over a year. Who knows if it still works." Before he could finish, she had him pinned beneath her, pressing down hard. His head nearly hit the headboard, but she reached out and cushioned it just in time. He was a little scared and tried to play the pity card, his old trick. Victoria knew all his moves and simply flipped him over. He couldn't take it, his voice choked. "Victoria, we don't have a condom." She leaned down to kiss him, her hot breath on the back of his neck. "Leo, we're gonna get married." He froze. "But I'm a divorce." The atmosphere hung still for a moment. Then the response was a furious, storm-like thrusting. Much later, Victoria bit his neck lightly. "You are never to say that again." He never did say that again. In the long years that followed, he never brought up that ridiculous episode with Tina. But the matter of getting married was always put on hold. After all, he had a career now, didn't have to worry about money, and life was pretty damn good. But Victoria never let it go. Over the years, Tina's career had been on a steady decline. She became withdrawn, no longer the gentle, beautiful woman she once was. Meanwhile, Victoria's career soared. He also found a job he loved and was doing exceptionally well. On his company's anniversary, Victoria had a few too many drinks. That night, in a drunken haze, she said to him, "Leo, you have no conscience." "How do I have no conscience?" "You know exactly what I mean." He wanted to laugh. Okay, I have no conscience. When are we getting married? Don't you think our current situation is great? We're comfortable together, happy. No Thais, no chance. He was no longer the person he used to be, who just wanted to live a conventional life. Now, what he wanted most was to please himself first. "So you could leave at any time, is that it?" He smiled and buried his face in her chest. "Victoria, I still love you very much right now. As for the future, let's just let it happen naturally." She was silent for a long while, then held him and kissed him. "Can I have another drink tomorrow?" No. Her stomach wasn't good, and he had already forced her to quit drinking. "But Ava and Julia are coming tomorrow. I haven't seen Ava in a year, and they're remarried. Doesn't that deserve a celebration?" Her words had a hidden meaning. He didn't take the bait but nodded in agreement. "Just one drink, then. And that's it. Fine." "So bossy. Well, you're the one who picked me. I guess I'll take responsibility for my choice." She probably never imagined that this one choice would define her entire life.